I like big brains and I cannot lie. It's finally time to talk about Dr. Wheelo. Hey folks, MasakoX here. Now I want you to cast your minds back to the early days of Dragon Ball Z, when the series was getting into its stride and we were getting to grips with the idea that key attacks and flying around the screen were starting to become the norm for everybody, as opposed to the mostly martial arts focus from the previous series. Boring, am I right? Now, of course I'm not right, Dragon Ball OG was awesome. But before the likes of Dr. Gero, and yet not before, thanks retcons, we had the likes of a scientist who was bent on one thing, to become the world's strongest. So, naturally, in his mind, it was Roshi. Ah yes, the world's strongest. You see, it's always been a pretty unique case within the realms of discussion concerning Dragon Ball Z movies, I find. It sort of bucks the trend in a number of key areas. Instead of creating what most could describe as a straight up copy of a villain from the actual show, similar in nature to what you're seeing in the main series, think Janemba/Boo, Cooler/Frieza, it sort of didn't do that. What the second Dragon Ball Z movie gave us was something different. It presented to us all the evil scientist shticks way before Dr. Gero was even an inkling in Toriyama's sketchbook. To most people, it would seem that Toriyama maybe here was curing an itch to appease his love of Western movies, including sci-fi and Frankenstein and all that, but remember, Toriyama rarely had much involvement with the Dragon Ball Z movies, and Takao Koyama is usually your guy for those things. Why is this? Well, clearly, at the time, Toriyama is far too busy producing the manga back in the early 90s, so the Toei production team took over duties with these guides, courtesy for the Dragon Book and an interview with Koyama. With regards to the contents, there was the restriction that the movie not progress into story settings further ahead than the TV anime at the time of its premiere. For example, even if I decided to do fusion, I wouldn't be allowed to do it ahead of the TV anime or the original manga. So I'd always be conscious of its state of progress on TV. And if we were doing the Frieza arc in the TV anime at the time of the premiere, a story would be born with the sense of, let's bring out Frieza's older brother. Except, at times, such as when the state of production on the TV anime caught up to the original work, it would be extremely tough with nothing to use as hints, and I received ideas directly from Toriyama. So only on the extremely rare circumstances Toriyama would give them a hand, but that was really rare. Like, when there was only a few weeks between the manga and the anime. Yeah, it was really tight. For the world's strongest, Koyama took inspiration for the names of the characters from Toriyama's hometown of Nagoya, with Wheelo, or Uiro, being a signature-themed cake from the region. Oh yeah, Nagoya's also famous for prawns and shrimp, so that's where you get the Kishimen and Kochin from. Not Biomen! That's a Super Sentai series, and that series did something way before Lost Galaxy. You know what I'm talking about. Yellow 4! Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. Back to the movie. Dr. Wheelo's goal was a simple one, but at the same time, rather curious and interesting. He didn't want to simply defeat the world's strongest, he wanted to become it, albeit in a manner which is far less elegant and far more gruesome than Ginyu's body change technique. He planned to fit that enormous brain of his into Roshi's or Goku's noggin, and that was everyone's best guess. Well, no one said that mad scientists needed to be smart. Oh wait, in fact, the DBZA explanation of his cranium absorbing fluids over 50 years kinda makes sense. Oh, you didn't think about that now, did you, Doctor? Not only that, but his sidekick, Dr. Kochin, is so dastardly over-the-top evil that he's a pleasure to watch. You have two doctors for the price of one. One more sinister and behind the scenes, and you've got another one who's a complete loon. They're simply for theatrics and your wingman, or wingdog. The movie itself is pretty good too, and well thought out, as it utilises the supporting characters rather competently. This was the time in the story where Goku needed the team around him to help him in his quest, them taking on the underlings in a manner which showed Goku as the cornerstone that made the whole thing work, instead of being the only part of it, with the others merely being window dressing. You know, actually working like a team. Now I know what you guys are going to say. Wait a second, Masako. Why are you making this video? It's not required. They've already modernised Dr. Wheelo and Super Dragon Ball Heroes. And for that, you're right. No one saw that coming, folks, but it turned out that Dr. W from Heroes is really Wheelo. I know, shocker. Okay, no, that's shocker, let's carry on. I mean, this was quite obvious, really. When we first saw Dr. W in promotional material, it became Super Dragon Ball Hero's worst kept secret. It was meant to be mysterious, but the surrounding characters and theme of early movies at the time sorta gave the game away months before the arc of his actually came to the fore. Sorry, Turles, you kinda gave the game away. So yeah, ever since this mysterious evil Colonel Sanders was introduced, and just before you think that we are bagging on this design, we're not. We actually think this is a good design, don't get us wrong. We knew that this would end up being Dr. Wheelo. We don't really follow the series anymore, since you folks don't really seem to care about Super Dragon Ball Heroes much, and I don't want to waste your time. But for the purposes of this particular video, we did have to go back in and do some research into this really surreal inclusion within the series. And also, we are sort of pleased that the creator team gave Wheelo a humanoid body with a brain which, you know, can fit inside one. So what is his purpose within this series? Well, when our heroes meet him in Hiffle, naturally, he seems to have been rather busy with improving Janemba whilst down there. Check out our video improving Janemba in particular up top if you're curious. I think you'll like it, it involves mobsters. He also later reveals a different form of his because this is Dragon Ball. You need to have multiple transformations or you're not doing it right. And to everyone's surprise, he reveals his true identity. But admittedly, it does look kinda neat. Here, he has a much slicker body and somehow a normally sized brain. I guess this is just one of his improvements, huh? It seems that those liquids have really messed up with the brain. And of course, it's pretty much par for the course with Super Dragon Ball Heroes cameos. He is allied with Fuse universe creation planners, who want to create a new universe to live alongside the existing 12. So, not really much to go on of his own. He is essentially there to act like a bad guy, with not much new development of his own other than we getting to see his original body, and a mech suit that would give Grey Fox a run for its money. If you think about it though, Wheelo's strength lies in not overly complicated plots that are related to this character. He only just wants to live forever, and in doing so, he just desires the strongest warrior for his new body. It's not like he wants world domination like Gero, or ending tons of people for energy like Cell. It's merely so he can continue his research forever, and be powerful. Just powerful enough. I think we could expand this trait a little bit more than Heroes did, up to the point where we could create a plausible scenario for a proper modern iteration of Dr. Wheelo. Now, first of all, we need to keep his backstory and his association with coaching intact. Those two things, there's nothing wrong with them at all. They're perfect. Still though, we can at least make tweaks to the initial premise of the movie. For starters, we don't need to incorporate Shenron's involvement in removing the snow. That's kinda silly. Even back then, when I first saw the movie, I found that rather unusual that Kochin would wish for melting ice. You know, Dragon Balls that he'd been looking for 50 years to use for that kind of thing. He could have at least given himself fire powers or built something that could excavate tons of ice in no time. Nope. You had to include something involving Shenron so that Gohan and Oolong couldn't use the Dragon Balls later, so yeah. In our new version of this opening, we would have it so that Wheelo would not wake up in the Dragon Ball Z Saiyan Saga era, but instead in the Super era. He would come to terms with his surroundings and who is classified as the strongest being in the world. But then it would dawn on him the gravity of this task. He would slowly begin to realize that the strongest warrior on Earth is at present a way more open to interpretation term than he had previously thought. How do you define strong these days? Do you refer to typical strength, God Key strength, inner strength? It's a lot more nuanced than it was back in early Z, when Ki was pretty much the watchword. Now this would require a much more detailed investigation from the Doctor, but after some coffee of course. I mean, he had been in stasis for roughly 70 years at this point, I think you need a brew. Now in terms of his new design, we would probably combine his modern design with this giant robot outfit from the end of the movie. As in, we would keep the smaller brain size from Heroes, as well as the more compact body, but we would then give it the ability to transform into a full-on sized mech through augmentations, as well as extra parts. That bulk in the second movie, that looked cool. So in short, his exosuit would then become a full-on mech. Everybody likes mechs, right? But you see, there'd be a flaw in his plan. Back in Age 762, this plan would have been amazing and would have worked faultlessly. But Wheelo would soon start to understand that in this day and age of Age 774+, his contraptions were a little bit outdated to say the least. Before he'd be able to go forth into the streets and do what he needed to, he would send probes to gather data about what had happened in the intervening time, whilst he was coming to terms with his plight. We will probably have it so that Kochin had been gathering intel as well, like Gero's probes with the Dragon team, and had been doing so for quite some time prior to Wheelo's full return to awoken state. Probably during the entire Super era, in fact, making him at least aware of beings such as Beerus, Frieza, Goku Black, Moro, and to him, Moro would have been a rather compelling entity, with Wheelo taking a very big liking to his fusion with the Earth's crust. Scientifically, this was remarkable. His residual mass still present near the fight location, all the while unnoticed while 7-3's head was recovered in the beginning of the Granola arc. This would greatly expand the perspective of this science-driven man, showing him that there are things beyond his comprehension. He now didn't have to settle being the world's strongest, he could be the universe's strongest, stronger than even gods. But amongst those ungodly powerful things, there is one thing that speaks to his desires as the man of science, something that is almost comforting. The man-made marvel that is the Infinity Engine. To him, this was something that he could understand perfectly. To him, this was the salvo needed to do well in this world. With that engine, he could whittle down any opponents and then just finish them off thanks to essentially unlimited stamina. Wheelo would become immensely aware of Gero's success in creating it, and even become fascinated in Marron, as well as 17's biological children. That is, if they exist, or we ever get to see them. That's right, we're going to make this retelling a more Android/Krilldog focused story. As much as it would be fun to have Wheelo as a Goku-centric enemy, this storyline would provide us with some more character exploration than having Goku in it. It could finally introduce 17's family in a proper way, and, well, include more tension, the stakes being higher. And besides, the best part of the Bio-Broly movie was the inclusion of 18 and Krillin, so why don't we do the same here, whilst upping the stakes even further for their familial unit? Also, it would make a fair lick of sense for Wheelo to realise that transferring himself into a body with an Infinity Engine, or outright making one from samples taken from an example from the androids or maybe their children, it would make more logistical sense nowadays than just taking up a straight body from an alien. Clearly, those aliens would be too powerful to contain and strange to comprehend with his antiquated knowledge. We could have it that initially, he and Kochin kidnap the children, but Kochin gets destroyed in the process, along with most of Wheelo's mech body. But his sublab manages to use the samples that were gathered on the way to create a body resembling his hero's human form. We end up with a villain where he gets 2 bites of the apple instead of 1. It's not a transformation technically, it's more like a reiteration of a similar theme. In the final act of the movie, he goes to enact revenge against our heroes, only to be defeated by their combined powers. I would even have it so the kids can use their abilities for the first time, and Krillin's Destructo Disc weakens the Doctor enough in order for 17 and 18 to sync up, finishing him off, since this whole thing is mostly personal. Maybe the disc could cut off something that was able to negate their powers. Who knows? But at the end of the day, we feel that this kind of story would be compelling, as it would allow both androids to come to terms with their nature, directly, Wheelo being a proxy for Gero, bringing back the memories of their time with him, and, well, them getting to have adventures as a family, working as a team. I mean, Mitchell's versus the Machines did this masterfully, so why don't we do this here for this outing, showing that they can all work together? Sure, the story itself would lack the Saiyans, but we feel that it could be special because there are no Saiyans. How often do we see characters other than Goku having adventures and their own villains? Hardly. And also, it's hard to improve Wheelo that much, but what we have here is still pretty good. Not very inventive, but good enough. Compelling. While we go about reintroducing stuff, we must be willing to rearrange decorations, and unlike Dragon Ball Heroes, give the character a genuine reason to be there, rather than, "Hey Dad, we're bringing in movie villains!" You can only go so far with that model. Wheelo is pretty good for what he was, but setting him off against the right set of characters would make all the difference. And besides, it would give us more of that cool Krilldog mechanic that we know and love. The most revolutionary plot? Not by a mile, but a welcome one for sure. But what do you folks think? Do you like the idea of Wheelo taking a swing at what Gero had come up with? Like the idea of 18 and Krillin being involved and Marron being relevant for once? Leave a comment below and let's get this discussion going. And I will see you in the next video. Catch you later!